A lot of people have been asking me about this book, Trapper. They're like, when did you write this new book? When does your new book come out? And the thing is, it's not actually a new book. It's complicated, but it's kind of interesting. So stay tuned. Hi guys, it's me, and I'm kind of excited to make a video about this book here, Trapper. I posted this cover the other day on Instagram, and lots of people have been messaging me about it and asking when my new book comes out. And the thing is, this isn't actually a new book. Um, it's actually an old book, one of my older books, and it's coming into new and exhilarating life, which I'm quite excited about, and I'll explain why in a bit. But the reason I'm doing that is because I'm really getting serious about my self-publishing career, and I've reached such dizzying heights, or dizzying to me, I don't know, in my publishing career in the past. You know, at my peak, oh, it's a wonderful period of making $10,000 a month. Best month ever was $14,000 a month in royalties I made from writing and self-publishing my books. And I'm like, this is what I was meant to do. This is what I was put on earth to do. And today, especially with Salman Rushdie being brutally attacked in New York, it's horrific. It made me realize that, for what it's worth, even the books that I write, which are only romance, actually do reach people. They mean things to people. I mean, I've sold 68,000 copies of my Knuckleheads books. And if you divide that by 12, if you assume, which is a stupid assumption, that everybody, instead of like 68,000 separate people buying books, it was my books in their entirety, all 12 books in the series, were bought by the same people, that would still be 5,000 people. 5,000 people paid money for what I write. And it's actually more impressive than that. I've reached 320,000 people on Kindle Unlimited, which you still get paid for, which is amazing, mind-boggling. My books have reached that many people. I'm actually legit. I've made $275,000 in royalties. And I've had a tough couple of years. And so, you know, my peak isn't where my peak is, but I'm like, I need to get back up there. It's not even a question of like whether I can do it. It's like whether I can do anything else at this point. So I'm getting serious about my writing and publishing game. And part of part of this is the impetus of being kicked off Facebook for 6 months. I wasn't able to do book advertising for that long, which is just like flatlined my entire self-publishing career. However, now I am in the process of getting my Facebook account back after taking Facebook to court. God, I sound like a madman. Are you listening to me? Well, I assume you're listening to me. I hope so. Maybe you're watching this with the sound off. But I'm sitting here going like, oh yeah, I was suing Facebook, blah, blah, blah. Yes, right. When I talk about myself, sometimes it sounds like I'm talking about a complete stranger. I'm like, I sold 68,000 copies of my books and I'm suing Facebook. I mean, who does these things? Anyway, I'm going to get my Facebook account back, which means I'm going to be able to start advertising again, which means I am going to be able to support my family and make a living from my existing catalogue of books. And that's the dream, isn't it? Because if you can make a living from your existing catalogue of books, then you can focus on writing and publishing to not just pay the mortgage, but also to do something meaningful. And in my own particular way, I think some of the things that I write do make things meaningful. And even if they only make things meaningful to a couple of people. And sometimes I think back on the emails I've got from people who read my books, who say, I mean, one person emailed me and she said, I love your books because you write about a character who has PTSD, and my husband is a veteran and he has PTSD, and it helps me understand him. And I was like, holy shit, I wrote something that means something to somebody. And you might think, what the hell does some ginger bloke from Winchester know about PTSD? And it's like, I spoke to veterans who have PTSD and I researched it, and it's an issue that, I don't know, I feel I'm kind of passionate about. I love living in this country, America, and I'm aware of the bad things about America as well as the good things. And the way we treat veterans is one of the things that is bad about America. So I write books specifically about a motorcycle club made up of veterans. Because if you look into the history of motorcycle clubs, it's generally how it started. Anyway, and I get to write something meaningful, and I get to, write stuff. This is the amazing thing. This is the power of writing. Like I have plot threads about the opioid crisis that's going on, and because my books are only romance, I get to write that, and I have like 5,000 people who read it, and it gets into their brains, and they digest that, and they hear my viewpoint, and sometimes it challenges things in them, and I don't know, it's amazing. To be a writer and to have an audience, it's such a privilege. And I don't know, it's mind-boggling. So I'm like, you know what, I have to do this. What the hell else is the point of being on this earth? What, am I just gonna write copy for cheeseburgers for the rest of my life and then die? No, I might as well do something with my life. And writing seems to be the thing that I'm doing. Because, I committed 30 odd years to it now, so I might as well continue. I'm digressing a bit, aren't I? But we're talking about me getting serious about my writing career and me getting back on Facebook. And in some ways, being off Facebook has allowed me to like sit there and be like, okay, let's do this strategically. And looping all the way back to this book Trapper, it made me start thinking that I should look back in other books and use them more strategically. Because it's all to do with strategy. That's the thing. When you're a self-published author, you are an author. You learn the craft of writing, and you write books that hopefully are meaningful and will touch people. And that's such an incredible thing. But then you have to learn a completely different thing, which is the business of publishing and marketing your books so people buy them. So ideally, the people who buy them will pay you to write them. That's the dream. That's the magical thing. And I'm right there, right there. I have the best of both worlds. I am so privileged to have the best of both worlds. I spent my entire life dedicated to writing since I was 9 years old. And you know what? I'm a fourth generation publisher and printer. It's amazing. I went back to France with my father and went through the family history. And it's amazing. It's like I've been in publishing. Our family's been in publishing for 4 generations. So I have a duty to get this right. And I have got this right in the past, so I need to continue to get this right. I'm 7 minutes into this video, and I haven't even got on to... I'm going to continue this, but I feel bad because I haven't even got onto this book yet. Right. So, I feel like I really have a duty to not just write these books that I want to write, but also to make them reach people, to be successful. I feel like I have a duty to be successful. As a writer, your writing becomes more meaningful the more people who read it. Not necessarily the more money you make, although that's nice, but it's the more people who read it. How can I reach the broadest and best possible audience? How can I speak to the people that my books were written for? And that's where Trapper comes in. So at the core of my writing business at the moment are the 12 books in my Knuckleheads Motorcycle Club series that I originally published as romance novels. And I've really grown proud of this catalogue of novels that I have. And that's why I decided to take the step of actually publishing them under my own name. But there's more to it than that. I got into writing romance novels because I wanted to tell adventure stories. And I'm a middle-aged posh kid from England. Nobody wants to hear sort of the traditional adventure stories from people like me. That's been done to death. And then romance is this vibrant, amazing industry in which self-published authors are now making so much money, and traditional publishing has just died and shriveled on the vine. And it's exciting and vibrant, and there's massive opportunity there. And I love romance books and chick lit. I mean, look, this is my bookshelf here. Boom, Fiona Walker. Oh, who else have I got? I've got Tessa Bailey here. I definitely have Tessa Bailey. I've got a bunch of romance books. I'm legit. When I say I'm like into women's writing, I am, because women's writing is emotionally complex, and men's writing is exciting and has explosions and motorcycles. And so I have been privileged with this writing career because I took the motorcycles and explosions and kind of melded them with the rich emotional stuff and the great structure of writing, everything that's good about writing, and melded them together into this big thing that is uniquely mine. And it's so exciting to have something that's like uniquely mine. And it all comes down to this book, Trapper, that I wrote, because Trapper was the moment in my writing career in which I decided to write the kind of books that I write and I enjoy writing and have been successful for me. I wrote that book in 2017, 5 long years ago. Oof, excuse me, I'm going to take a sip as I reminisce. Okay, 5 long years ago. That was the year I first gave up working to become a full-time writer. And up until that point, I had written 9 full-length books, and none of them had really been successful. But I was starting to see them become successful. I'd written 4 full-length novels in what I call the Fight Night series, and they were about MMA writers. It was MMA romance series. And MMA romance apparently is a subcategory that only I wanted to read about. I didn't even necessarily want to read about it. I thought it'd be cool. And one of the flaws of all writers is that we tend to be completionists. We like to come up with a concept and then see it through to completion, even though it might be completely disastrous in terms of like the writing career part of it. So I committed to writing these MMA romance novels, even though they never really managed to be commercially successful. But the one thing they did do is develop my writing. So I'd written these 4 books, and the first one started off, it was third-person perspective, and it had cheating in it, and it was ridiculously long. The second book started to get a bit more focused on what romance is really about. Then I read a ton of romance books, and I made some fundamental changes with the next book in the series, which is where I just focused on male and female alternating chapters and had more of the romance structure. And then the 4th book in that series, a book called Trigger, I hit it. I got it right. It's like first person perspective, alternating chapters. This is the structure of a romance novel. And I wrote it and I'm like, I got this now. I know what to do. My MMA romance series is a complete freaking mess. So maybe we'll just push that off to the side there. But I know how to write a romance novel now. So I thought, what if I could just write any romance story I wanted? What if I could write an adventure story? Because I love adventure stories. As a romance novel. What is a romance novel? A romance novel is when a hero and a heroine get together and have smooch times. And in most adventure stories, there's a hero and a heroine and they get together and have smooch times. So all I have to do is get an adventure story with a hero and heroine who get to have smooch times and just write it in the style of a romance book. And that's where Trapper arrived. I was like, you know what? MMA series, we won't even talk about that anymore, which means that I'm a blank slate. I can write whatever book I want. What book am I going to write? And let's see, 2017, I think one of the Jurassic World movies had just come out. Chris Pratt was the hottest thing ever. My wife had a huge crush on Chris Pratt and was always talking about him. And I was like, oh yeah, he'd make a great action hero. And so I pretty much in my brain and just lifted him from the character he was in the Jurassic World movies. And I was like, where am I going to put him? Oh, let's see. Well, he's wearing plaid, he's wearing jeans, he likes motorcycles and stuff. Maybe he needs to be somewhere rugged. So I dropped him in Alaska. And I was like, what else do I like? I love airplanes. Love airplanes. I've always been a big fan of airplanes. So I was like, oh, what if he was a bush pilot? That would be great. So yeah, I invented this character. His nickname is Trapper, who looks like Chris Pratt and wears plaid and lives in Alaska, and he's a bush pilot flying his little Cessna plane. It's a Cessna seaplane as well with the little floats on around Alaska doing stuff. And then you think, oh, adventure story. Well, okay. What could the adventure story be about? We need a heroine. And I was really into plotting this, and I was speaking to my best friend about it, who is this absolutely beautiful young lady called, who, yeah, she's into this kind of weird stuff that I'm into. She reads a lot of fan fiction, and fan fiction actually has, you could learn so much from reading fan fiction. And yeah, so I was bouncing ideas back of her, and she was like, okay, let's bounce some ideas back. And my friend is diabetic. And I thought, wow, imagine, I've got this hero who's right there. He's in Alaska. He's a bush pilot. Alaska, the middle of nowhere. What if you had a heroine who was diabetic, and she got stranded in Alaska? Because you think, that's quite a tense, complicated situation there. And so, yeah, I decided to write a heroine kind of based off my friend. And she was okay with that, and she helped me with the ideas. Because then it starts to expand. It's like, okay, well, my friend's from New Jersey, and she wears high heels all the time. There's another Jurassic World thing, actually. There was that stupid scene in Jurassic World where the girl runs away from the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and she's wearing high heels. And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, my friend, she could do that. She could run anywhere in high heels. And I was like, what if you get a girl in high heels from New York and you put her in Alaska, and she's diabetic as well, and then it was like airplane. Ooh, you need an airplane crash. What would happen if Chris Pratt and this beautiful girl from New York? And then I was like, what kind of actress could you play? Oh, Anna Kendrick. That's what we need. Anna Kendrick and Chris Pratt crashed in the Alaskan wilderness and had to survive, and she was diabetic. And there were bears, and there was a bad guy, a big hulking bad guy. Let's cast him off the top of my head. Vincent D'Onofrio, the guy who plays Kingpin. Oh yeah, he'd make a great bad guy. And what if you had a slimy second in command? And it's funny, because going back 2017, when I was coming up with the idea for this book, I went to the cinema with my kids to watch this kids movie called Monster Trucks, which is actually quite fun, not going to lie. And that had, I think he's a fairly well-known comedic actor in it, but he plays this like slimy Weasley guy in it. And I literally was like, oh, that's the guy. Like, peel him out and put him in my story. That's how stories are assembled. I love it. It's like everyone thinks writing is like an art, but it's not. It's not even a science. It's a craft. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like Lego. You come up with, you've got this structure, this base plate of a romance novel, and then you just like pluck hero here, get a heroine here, get like a bad guy here, get a situation here, and then your story almost tells itself. Because if you have a realistic enough hero and a realistic enough heroine, and you put them in this situation, you can imagine how they would react to it, and that's really what drives the story. These books almost write themselves if you have strong enough characters. It's exciting. So yeah, that's where I came up with the idea of writing Trapper. And I wrote this story, and I really enjoyed it. My friend read it, and she liked it, and she said it was okay. And she doesn't bullshit. Like, if she didn't like it, she would legitimately tell me. And that's the kind of friend you want to everybody, by the way. If you have a friend who is brutally honest, that's the best kind of friend to have. So I published it, and it didn't do great, but it did okay. And it was the first book I'd ever written that did okay. It made, I think, around $20 a day in book sales. And that doesn't sound like much. But then, if you think $20 a day over the course of a year actually adds up. And $20 a day with all of the other books out there, that actually adds up. When you've only got one book and you're selling $20 a day worth of it, and you're a self-published author, it's actually pretty impressive. And that book was what inspired me to write my next book, which was No Way Out, which is the start of the Knuckleheads Motorcycle Club series. And that book led to the book I wrote that became a bestseller, that like exploded everything. And I hadn't even thought about Trapper for a long time, but as I had been kicked off Facebook, I had a lot of time to think, and I was like, when I get back onto Facebook, I'm going to start advertising my books again, and they are going to be successful. I've already proven that my books can be extremely successful. And I made a video about that the other day. It's like I spent $60 on advertising and made almost $600 in profit. I know I can advertise my book successfully. So it's like now all I need to do is get all my ducks in a row and set up my system. So when I'm back on Facebook and can pour money into advertising, everything is already in place like a well-oiled machine. Because again, I talk about you are a writer on one hand, but if you want to be successful in this business, you have to learn about writing and marketing and publishing and advertising. Because if you can get the writing, marketing, advertising, and everything in place, you can make a living doing this. One of the watchwords that I keep repeating all the time is anybody has the potential to be a successful self-published author. All you need to do is learn the craft of writing and then follow the process for successful self-publishing. And so right now, what I'm doing as I wait to hopefully get my Facebook account back is I'm setting up the process for successful self-publishing. And part of that comes down to why Trapper has reemerged as a book that I'm looking at. If the secret to being a successful self-published author is to build up a mailing list, a subscriber base. So you want people to give you their email addresses so you can send out announcements every time you publish a new book. They will buy that new book, and it's all a question of sales, and they're like your hottest audience. And if you're good and the best writers and self-publishers, they love having a subscriber list, and they send them emails and they get responses. And I admit some of the greatest pleasures in my life has been sending out newsletters and getting people replying to them. It's amazing. I have people out there who pay money to read my books and care enough to email me about them. It's amazing. I have people email me, I add a picture of a cat and I send out an email about that, and then I have one of my readers send back pictures of her cat and talk about how sad she was because one of her other cats had died. And I'm like, isn't this amazing? Somebody out there who reads my books is invested enough to email me and tell me about her cat. How freaking privileged am I for that to happen? It's amazing. Anyway, yeah, to be a successful self-published author, you need to have a subscriber list. And it's so interesting how so much of this comes back to marketing. It's like I have my background in advertising and marketing and agency advertising and stuff, so I know the whole process. It's like, okay, to me, I would like to have the email address of somebody who likes reading my books. How do I get that? And what you do is you write a really good book, and then you have a link that people can click in these books to join your subscriber list. They'll give you their email address. And what you want to do, because you're in marketing, is sweeten the deal a little. You want to give them a really good reason to join your mailing list. So you say, hey, if you join my mailing list, I'll send you a free book. How about that? And hopefully people see that offer and they makes them more inclined to join your subscriber list. But you have to set up a system so they get your free book. And up until this point, I've been half-arsing it. I have a system set up through MailChimp, and actually I put it on my website for a bit, and it got all complicated. That's another story. Oh, God, you would not believe technical issues I've been having. But anyway, the reason Trapper comes back, I'm 23 minutes into this video. Is anyone still watching? Hi, if you are, this is amazing. I don't know, I'm just going to publish this anyway. But because it's kind of nice to get it off my chest. Right. I had set up a system where people would receive the first book in my Knuckleheads Motorcycle Club series as a free book if they joined my subscriber list. And that is stupid. Think, McFly, think. 90% of the people who are going to be joining my mailing list will be doing so because they had just read the first book in my series, because that's really the book I'm going to be advertising. So why would I give away that same book as like my lead magnet, my reader magnet? Why would people join my subscriber list? They get a free copy of the book they've already bloody got. Yeah, it's stupid. Think, McFly, think. So, I needed to rethink that and put a different book in there. And here's the thing, when you've got a series like the Knuckleheads, there are 12 books, if I'm not going to give away the first book in the series, what's the point of giving away any of the other books in the series? And then I look at my other books in my book catalogue and I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe I could use one of those as sort of a reader magnet. And it came down to Trapper, because I was like, you know what, Trapper, that was the first book where I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to write the adventure stories that I want to write, just as romance novels. So it was the first book that really got me into this successfully. But also, those characters in Trapper do make a reappearance in book 4 in my Knucklehead series, because I love to have this co-joined universe. It's a whole thing. So kind of that's a book that is on the periphery of the Knuckleheads anyway. So I was like, yes, I will give away a copy of Trapper free to people who join my mailing list. And then I opened up Trapper and I was like, wow, I sucked as a writer in 2017, didn't I? So I was like, oh God, I'm been spending the last week and a half going through this book and improving my writing. God bless everybody who read that book the first time and left me a kind review, because they did. It's got a fair number of reviews and people have said nice things about it, because I was not the writer that I am today then. I'll tell you what though, as I go through it, I'm excited because a story is really good. Like, as I'm going through it, I'm like, the writing is clumsy, needs to be improved, but the story is actually one of the best stories I've written. There's just this right amount of conflict going on. And then it's a really exciting adventure story. And I was like, damn, this is good. I actually feel good about giving this away. It's like, if somebody joins my subscriber list and they get this book free and they read it, they're probably going to like it. And that means I will have got somebody to buy whatever book it is that made them subscribe to my mailing list in the first place. And they get this book, which they like as well. And at that point, we're best buds. And as I said way back in this long video, the purpose of being a writer is not to make money, it's to get people to read your books. And so if you give away a good book and people read it, then you are accomplishing your goal. And it's also helping your other goals, your financial goals. So yeah, I was like, Trapper. Trapper is where it's at. And finally, we loop round to the very beginning, where I thought, Trapper is so good, I think that should be the next book I also re-release under my own name. I have this strategy that I'm doing. I've written a series of romance novels, and I'm proud of them. And so I'm going to republish them under my own name. But I very specifically taken the route of designing covers, and I design all my covers myself. And I'm not going to lie, they're pretty good. But they're pretty bloody good, actually. Anyway, yeah, I designed the covers to kind of resemble adventure thrillers. Clive Cussler was really like my inspiration for that, because your cover is vitally important. So I have this conceit going of romance novels and thriller action adventure novels, and they're the same novels, and they were simply targeting one towards women and one towards men. But I honestly believe the stories and the books I've written, I'm arrogant enough to believe, I think women will enjoy as romance novels and men will enjoy as action adventure stories. And I love that's it. That's what I'm doing right now. That's my craziness. This is my purpose. I'm like, I'm gonna be that weird guy who said, hey, I'm gonna write novels that both men and women will enjoy, and then I'm gonna directly attack the conceit of how books are marketed towards different sexes. So I'm going to get the same book and I'm going to market it as like an action adventure Clive Cussler book. And then I'm also going to market it as a bare-chested, raw romance novel book. People are going to read it either way. And so far that has been working. And soon I'm going to have access to my Facebook account back. And I'm going to be able to start advertising my books and getting this whole ball rolling. And then things are going to happen. Oh, I sound like a complete madman, don't I? Funny, here's me being a James Bond fan my whole life, and I'm starting to sound like a Bond villain. But this is the thing. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to write adventure stories and romance novels and reach different people and just do something. When I die, when I get eaten by a lion or whatever, it's like at the moment my top tier choice of death option. Um, I want people to have like best-selling author Roland Hume, who wrote romance novels that were also exciting adventure stories, got eaten by a lion today. Because otherwise, what's it going to be? It's like advertising executive Roland Hume, who wrote copy for cheeseburger adverts, died today. Yeah, no, might as well do something with this life that we've got. And Trapper is right now going to be like the next big thing in the push for that to happen. So yeah, this is a 30-minute video. I can't imagine anybody in the world is going to watch this. If you do, God bless you, and thank you. But it's kind of exciting because Trapper, I think, I'm excited to share it with people. Right, that's the long and convoluted story about what Trapper is and why I'm publishing it. But I'm really excited to do so, and I'm really excited to share it with you. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to this long, convoluted video about my stupid book, but I am very excited that anybody watches anything I make, and thank you very much for doing so. Cheers. I'm Roland Hume. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got the link right here you can click. And otherwise, don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.